I'm here in the bunker. I'm here in the love-hate bunker at my house, and so I'm watching now you guys, as opposed to like when we're on the desk and I'm just sort of, I'm looking at the rundown and I'm sort of in my own mind. So I'm getting more of a chance to look at Jay as opposed to a side view, which is what I usually get at the table. I'm looking at him straight on. Connor, can we get a ruling on this facial hair that Jay has started to grow? This prepubescent kind of mustache.
An evil look.
He's looking like he's ready to go out and solve some mysteries or something like that. I would like the regulars to weigh in on whether or not Jay should keep the facial hair. I'm not sure I'm down with it, Connor.
Well, it's about 1 day away from being more of an evil look.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry.
Happy Friday. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. That's right. Evil Jay drinks for free. You can clap for yourself.
Yeah, why not?
It's a tailored look now. I feel like you're being mindful of it.
Had Jen in makeup yesterday or a couple days ago tell me I need to get a haircut as well.
Oh, wow.
There's very few people in America who aren't telling me to remove hair from my body in some way or another. I will say, before we get into the rundown, this
Guys,
is
audio's coming in and out. I don't know why.
One of the great instances of stones being thrown in glass houses, because there are a lot of things that other shows might do better than us, but there's nothing that is done better in the fantasy football industry than the ability to grow bad facial hair than this show.
100%. I'll take the charge.
Nothing.
Yep.
Matthew's got absolutely nothing. Lawrence Jackson, unfortunately, he does raise the bar a little bit, but yeah. And also, as well, in terms of whether I'm going to shave, I haven't shaved in 33 years. I've never shaved.
This is just a look.
33 years of work, and I don't plan on shaving anytime soon.
Respect. I take the exact same approach. It feels like all of our coworkers are getting comfortable with us. When someone's telling you to get a haircut, someone else is making fun of your facial hair, which I'll raise my hand.
Off, King. Yeah.
Listen, welcome to the regulars, by the way, on this lovely Friday. Of course, Matthew Berry will be joining us here in just a moment.
Maybe.
We think so, from his NBC-branded bunker, which you will all see in just a moment. Listen, we have an interesting show today. We've gotten a lot of requests around salary cap-related drafts, so we're going to talk strategy with those, how they differ from a normal snake draft. We're going to be taking a ton of your questions and probably issues in the comment section as well, so we'll be pulling from YouTube. So if you're watching live on YouTube, or if you're not, this is your reminder that you should be every day, 12 p.m. Eastern time, live on YouTube. And, of course, we'll get to all the player news. We had a couple preseason games last night, a couple things to react from as well, and maybe some future trades on the way before we close things out with last call. So we try to predict, it's not that hard to predict, who will win the AFC East. But, Jay, let's jump right into it here. Salary cap draft 101. I think, number one, the pros of this are pretty obvious. It's the most fair way to draft. There's not things skewed by necessarily draft position. Everyone has access to every single player. So if, say, you were a massive Najee Harris fan, you could bet a wide allotment of your pool on that player. Where you look at the cons, the drafts typically take much, much longer. They can be harder to prep for because there is, one of our favorite words on this show, more variance. And mistakes are more costly. But let's start with the pros here. Jay, what is something that you like about the salary cap draft?
Well, I think the main thing is just fairness and having access to every player and having that player pool available, as opposed to being at the mercy of a snake draft where your spot in the order is just going to determine so much. So I think that is the best thing, just kind of creating equality. Also, if you're a real sicko and you really want your draft to take a long time and you want to really investigate every single player, then this is the better format, because you can really kind of expand on those opinions by having access to every player. So I think that is the best stuff. I think the main negative is just that, one, it just takes a long time. It takes a really long time. And then also, if you're doing it with, just kind of like a homely, like friends and stuff who haven't really done it before, it's absolute chaos. Like, no one knows really what to do. And so if you do know what you're talking about, that can be a good thing. But it's like there is more variance in the experience of the draft, I'd say.
Yeah, I would think that it's one of those that you probably hate your league mates by the time it's done, and you're going to need a couple of days to like them again for not only the bidding, but how long it takes.
I will say as well, it is a better format for comedic value.
Yes.
Just with the way that people will just absolutely blow their budget too early. And it's, again, a strategic thing too, where if you know the people that you're drafting with are very conservative, then you're better off, potentially putting up big names of players that you want earlier. If you think that people are going to just go wild from the get-go, then put up, names of people that you don't want to be taken. So there's a lot more, I think there is, in a way, there's a lot more strategic elements just because there's more control that you can exercise. And also it's kind of fun to be, driving up the price on players that you don't actually want. Like there's all these elements that don't come into play in snake drafts.
Right, and going back to kind of your point here is that some of your league mates might just say, hey, I'm going to allocate so much budget to wide receiver, and you can kind of look at the running back board and be like, oh, I can pay 50 cents on the dollar for who I think it will be an RB1 for their team. So there's just a lot of it with salary cap drafts is knowing the people you play with, because they're going to have biases for certain players that where in a snake draft, as the order comes down and you're most likely doing it from, if you're not doing it on a draft board in person, you're most likely doing it on a computer with rankings in front of them that skew biases as well. By the way, awesome comment from Julio Think You Are. Audio issues or building up to the main event? We'll see. Matthew's music might just hit at some point, and he'll jump in here. All right, so let's get in. We're going to get into some more questions as well. Don't worry if you have more questions, salary cap draft related, we'll jump to those. But let's talk about player values as well, because this is a really, really important one. If you're playing on an industry site / platform, you need to look up the average values from recent drafts, because this kind of goes back to it. It feels like the pool is more wide open, more scattershot than just kind of trickling one by one down a board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with snake draft, ADP is just a very easy thing to conceptualize where, okay, you just know that Christian McCaffrey's going RB5. Here's how many running backs have been taken before him. I think that just understanding your scoring system and how that translates to auction values is very important. You can see here the Fantasy Life Plus
really
values, which is super helpful, because if you don't know what the value is, if you can't conceptualize it off the top of your head, which is a very difficult thing to do, then this is a very important guideline. So very crucial to know the format and how it translates to values, because otherwise you're really flying blind.
Yeah, I mean, this for context here, you might go into a draft and think, okay, do I have to spend $55 for Ashton Genty? Well, this gives you kind of a baseline of, hey, if you believe in Genty more than most people, you think he should be the 4th or 5th pick in a draft, well, then maybe you're willing to spend $40. But the reality is, if somebody in your league is willing to pay the same for Bijan Robinson that they're paying for Ashton Genty, well, this gives you a really good baseline. So Fantasy Life Plus, especially a big reminder for whatever settings you're playing on, you can get values like that as well. Another thing is that some people might not think of, if you're drafting in a home league, look up the previous drafts and see how your league mates valued some players. And yes, there is inconsistencies year to year in fantasy, but there's also a lot of consistencies that can kind of give away how at least maybe the top 50 might stack.
Yep, and I think in general in home leagues, I find that the best approach is to throw out the biggest names earliest, because people aren't going to let, like for instance, I'm like not drafting Saquon in any league basically, because I think that his value is basically commensurate to Christian McCaffrey's, and I just rather have Christian McCaffrey at price than Saquon. So I'd be throwing out Saquon the first time, every time, because someone is going to spend $50 on Saquon Barkley, particularly if it's in a home league. It's not like he's not a known brand name, Saquon Barkley. Like, people will bid on him, people will allocate a certain amount of their budget to him. So just, I think, understanding what your league makes are likely to do. Also, like little stuff like knowing who every team that your league mates support. Like, right? So if there's an Eagles fan, then they're more likely to pay up for, if you're in a league with a lot of Eagles fans, then you're more likely to have people overpay for Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, etc.
Getting back to how Fantasy Life Plus can help you, how about player values? Have your own set of player values as well. Like, you need to use player tiers is where this is really, really helpful. But for instance, look at a positional auction wide receiver 1 tier is how I would kind of distinguish this with Fantasy Life Plus. This is an easy way to look at it, Jay. Jamar Chase, who's typically in redraft going as the #1 player in fantasy. He's priced here at $66, where CeeDee Lamb, another first-round wide receiver, is priced at $50. But then you could look at the difference of a tier 2 wide receiver that you have to think of it. These guys would obviously, be going in a much different space. Justin Jefferson, I would say, has a little bit more variance. But Malik Neighbors and Nico Collins, who necessarily aren't first-round picks, are priced a little bit lower.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it is interesting the differentiation in price between Jamar Chase being, essentially 2x the price of Nico Collins. I'd much rather have Nico Collins at $34 than Jamar Chase at $66. So yeah, it is all just different ways of conceptualizing value.
All right, we have a question coming in from Mr. T. He said, what's the most you ever spent on a player, Jay and Connor?
Well, I think this kind of speaks to the fact that in auction drafts in particular, your natural biases can kind of infect more so than in snake draft, where you can only, you can overreach for a player, but particularly at the top end, there's only so much you can overreach. So I remember 2022. In 2021, that was the year that Jonathan Taylor was like Offensive Player of the Year runner-up. I had a big bet on Jonathan Taylor. Watched all the Colts games down the stretch, developed this connection to Jonathan Taylor, and I really wanted Jonathan Taylor the following year. And I think and he was going as RB1 that season, flirting with #1 player in fantasy with Cooper Kupp. So I think that was like a $70 type of arrangement. But he was so separated from everyone else, it felt. But yeah, that's about what I've maxed out at.
Yeah, I've been something similar. One year I got burned by Christian McCaffrey, where he was coming off of a top year, and he had a lot of these inconsistent injuries now with the Niners. But one year, I was like, you know what, I want the hero back, and I'm going to spend top tier budget, because I felt like that year I could fill out with more of tier 3 wide receivers, going back to our conversation about what a tier 3 wide receiver looks like and beyond. So it just depends. It's all strategy building of a roster. And you have the same exact thing in a snake draft, just based on order, where it actually gives you a little bit more power, where if you believe in a hero player on your roster, you can spend as much money as you want to get them. The problem with that is, like in my situation, that player could be an injury away from burning you, because you need that player to carry your roster where you're relying on value throughout else. So it's a really, really good question, in a sense that there's times that's going to help you. Like, there's going to be people this year, Jay, that are probably like, hey, I'll spend 65 plus on Bijan Robinson because I think he's going to be the RB1 in football this year. And if you're right on that bet, it doesn't really matter how much you spent on him, because if you have the best running back in fantasy, you're most likely going places. Yeah,
and I think as well, it's just also a matter of your bidding strategy needs to be influenced by just how much people are bidding early on. Like, there are worlds where you're going to be able to get random guys at the end of the auction for $1 or $2 who should be going for $5 or $6, because everyone has shot their budget early on. And then there are other auction drafts where people are going to be very conservative with their money, and then all of a sudden there's a bidding war for Zach Charbonnet at the end of the draft, and you just don't know how it's going to unfold unless you're paying attention to just the dynamics of the draft to that point.
Right, and this kind of brings us to another point, that you have to understand positional depth more than ever, because you're playing with a budget, right? When you're playing with picks, well, there's times where you can get bailed out a little bit, by just, once again, the slotted players trickling, where you're like, oh my goodness, I don't have a wide receiver 3, but they're all right in front of me. Where this one, once again, going back to how your salary cap league is doing bidding, they might be sending a ton of bids at one position that they feel, not so great about, right? Like tight end this year and quarterback. The first 4 quarterbacks are going to be bid on high and going to be bid on early. And the same thing can be said about the likes of, we talk about Brock Bowers, George Kittle, and Trey McBride in this bucket all the time as well, where there's probably going to be a lot of people that say, I'm going to actually stay out of the top tier of wide receivers, and I'll go get Ricky Pearsall and Matthew Golden and players more in that category later. So positional depth is massive in this.
Yeah, and I think the biggest variance in auction drafts often comes where when you get to that, in terms of like ADP guys going like 100 to 120, and because Tucker Kraft, for instance, his on Fantasy Life, his consensus value is like $12. Like, there are a lot of auction drafts where Tucker Kraft's going to go for $3-4 because of just the way that the draft is shaken out. Zach Charbonnet, who I mentioned before, $11. Another guy kind of in that range. So I think that's where the variance really sets in, because for the most part, like, Jamar Chase isn't going to go for less than $50 or anything, right? So you really do get the variance once you get outside the real top guys.
For playoffs hopefuls, the last chance awaits. The NASCAR Cup Series closes out the regular season in primetime on the high banks of Daytona tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on NBC and Peacock. We're going to take a break. We got more auction draft strategy and analysis covered for you later, but when we're back, we got to get into the latest Rotoworld Player news right after this.
Can you speak to Chris Godwin's, possible availability, and I guess he's taken off the PUP list?
He's taken off the PUP list, but he's got to get in football shape and everything else, so I wouldn't expect him to play early on.
Is there a goal? Is there a week that would be the ideal return for him?
No, just when he's ready. Just when he's ready. I mean, he's been out a long time. He's got to get in football shape. Tristan the same way, but they'll be off, and then we'll see how it goes going forward.
That was Todd Bowles, head coach of the Tampa Bay Bucs, on Chris Godwin. We got plenty of Rotoworld Player news. Bowles is a real jolt. A real jolt of caffeine.
He must be great behind the scenes. Just, let me tell you, I'm not ready to run through a brick wall.
You know what's funny? When he was coaching the Jets, I always ask people, I'm like, is Todd just always like this all the time? And they're like, no. And like sometimes during halftime, he'll come in and flip a table and scream. Wow. Yeah. And I'm like, so it's just a great switch. That's impressive.
Yeah.
He just has that kind of switch with the players. And every player loves Todd Bowles.
Yeah.
Loves him.
The injury updates are great, particularly if he doesn't want to be there. They'll be like, oh, Mike Evans, how's he doing? Hamstring.
Yep. Yeah, when he's ready, he's ready. Yeah. And you know what? I kind of respect it.
Yeah.
Because he just gets sick of being asked it, and he doesn't know.
Yeah. Team plays hard as well. That team always plays hard.
Yes, there's no denying that.
Professionally coached.
And he is being honest here about Chris Godwin, because while Adam Schefter reports they're going to activate Godwin off the PUP list, he's unlikely to play until October because this is a serious injury. I feel like we found out how serious it was much later on, where they want to actually have a slow ramp up here, which in our world, Jay, is a huge deal because Emeka Egbuka right now is one of the biggest talking points in all of fantasy.
Yeah, I think the thing with Godwin is that it's not just he's, likely going to miss the first month of the season. It's when does he actually get back to being fantasy viable? Because that date is going to be, I think, at least a few weeks past when he does return, especially if, just how is this going to unfold? Like, Emeka Egbuka is going to get a lot more of the offense than initially anticipated. I think he's going to look good in that role, and I don't think he's going to just get sidelined as soon as Chris Godwin comes back. So I think that Chris Godwin now is a distant third in the pecking order of who you want to draft on the Bucs, certainly. And last year, Chris Godwin was incredible. He was playing at like a top 10 wide receiver in the sport kind of level, but this is a severe injury. I don't think it was supposed to have multiple surgeries, and it's required multiple surgeries. So I think the idea that Godwin, who is a player who, is dependent on burst and speed, that he is going to be back to Chris Godwin this year now seems somewhat unlikely. So I think that he's a guy who can potentially provide value in the back half of the season, but I don't have any real interest in drafting Chris Godwin where he's going now.
Yeah, you're going to have to be really patient. That guy, again, on the YouTube comments, what's more chill, Jay's tracksuit collection or Todd Bowles answering any question? It's a battle of the Titans right there. We'll see how it plays out this season. Listen, going back to Egbuka here, whose ADP has been soaring. Right now in redraft, he's going around the 105th pick. That's wide receiver 42. Think of the tier that is Cooper Kupp, Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings kind of range. When we were talking to Matthew this morning, he was saying for him it's at a point where he's going to be closer to ranked as wide receiver 30. I know in his latest rankings he's wide receiver 33 right now, but this is someone in your league. If he's not taking in the first 35 wide receivers, what he can do for you the first 5+ weeks of the season, and Guillotine's going to be a totally different beast because he'll have a massive impact there, it can be league altering. Because even if he cools off with the return of Godwin, you're probably going to have a solution by then.
Yeah, and I think what is happening to Travion Henderson's ADP, which I think has maybe now gotten a little bit out of control, where this guy's being, I don't think people expect him to be a workhorse back, but he's going around pick 50 now in drafts. I think that is the rise that should be happening to Emeka Egbuka, where he should be soaring to similar levels as Travion Henderson. I think there's a reasonable chance, just given age profiles, that Egbuka could outperform Mike Evans this year. I'd make Mike Evans the favorite there, but that's in the realm. This guy was drafted pro-ready. They spent a first-round pick on him for a reason, despite having a loaded wide receiver room as is. And this team, they threw the ball a lot last year. A lot of it as well that made Baker Mayfield succeed was a lot of short stuff, a lot of screens, a lot of design plays like that. So I think that Egbuka, he's going to come in and just from the start be a guy who, produces at a wide receiver 2 type of level.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm excited about Emeka Egbuka. He's one of the most pro-ready prospects in the draft. We have some breaking news during the show, and we've been waiting for this one. The Commanders are officially trading running back Brian Robinson to the 49ers in exchange for a 2026 sixth-round pick. So obviously not a big return here for a running back that is, I believe, entering a contract year here in Brian Robinson. But Jay, as somebody who's been super high on Christian McCaffrey, what do you think of the move of the Niners getting some? It feels like they had to have some kind of depth because they were one McCaffrey injury away from okay, all our other guys are hurt too. And this cost is nothing.
Yeah, there's one injury away from Isaac Guerrero, who's not ready to be a number one running back for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. And even though it's not him specifically, but different variations on the Patrick Taylor experience off of last year. So I think that more this, and I don't think this signals anything necessarily about Christian McCaffrey's health.
It's not stealing into McCaffrey's workload.
Yes,
yeah.
I think it's more just an acknowledgement that Christian McCaffrey's 29 years old. He's dealt with all these injuries, and there is a material chance that he gets hurt. And if he does get hurt, Brian Robinson is a better option than what they had previously on the roster. And to get him for a sixth-round pick, a guy who's shown it was produced at a really high NFL level when he's been out there healthy. I think it's just protection against McCaffrey and a different look sometimes. I think there were games 2 years ago where McCaffrey's playing 95% of the snaps. And I think that is not going to repeat, but that's not being baked into his ADP. So I don't think this changes much, but certainly makes Brian Robinson the insurance answer for McCaffrey.
A good comment on YouTube from Julio, who said, could be to have CMC out more for receptions and B-Rob in the backfield. My take on that is if you have a 2nd and 2 and you want somebody to just smash through the A-gap, sometimes you'd like that to be Brian Robinson, where McCaffrey is such a dynamic threat, not only as an outside runner, but as a receiver, that maybe this is also a way to preserve McCaffrey and actually make his output more efficient and explosive while finding a way to keep him healthy for the long course of a season, not the short term.
Yeah, I think this is, I think Brian Robinson's going to largely play the Elijah Mitchell role from 2 years ago where, McCaffrey, if it's a 27-10 game in the fourth quarter and it's out of hand, but not completely out of hand. Previously they might have felt like, we've got to keep Christian in there. Now it's more like, okay, Brian Robinson can get these drives. He's still a reliable running back and a better option than what they had.
Comment section jumping for joy at the prospects of Bill Croskey-Merritt on the Commanders now, which, listen, we can kind of jump to this one here. I mean, we heard from Commanders head coach Dan Quinn, who indicated Chris Rodriguez Jr. is likely to handle short yardage and goal line rushing duties. So I know everybody's really, really excited right now about Bill Croskey. But Jay, it also sounds like Chris Rodriguez isn't going anywhere either. And we've seen this kind of play out with him working in front of Croskey during most of the preseason as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very frustrating backfield from a fantasy perspective and a very effective one from an NFL perspective, where just having Jaden Daniels as your quarterback is such a cheat code for rushing efficiency across the board. Austin Eckler is obviously going to get worked in a ton, and I think that week to week it's going to depend a lot on just touchdown variance and getting goal line carries, but I don't think anyone is super appealing in terms of, I don't think there's going to be any top 12 running back that comes out of Washington this season. Going to be 3 guys who are all hyper efficient but with limited usage.
Yeah, I'm with you as well, as we have more questions rolling in on all of these guys. This one with B-Rob going to the 49ers, where does that put JCM's ranking and auction cost here? That is from Irish on YouTube.
I don't think it should change anything because the team was already acting. Dan Quinn's already talking about him, though he doesn't exist.
He wasn't playing another snap for them, and it wasn't even a secret.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think it changes much. Obviously, JCM's ADP has soared up 45 spots recently. I think that it's largely being baked in at this point that Brian Robinson wasn't going to be there.
But to the point here from Fantasy Bandit, he said, I think the Croskey-Merritt hype has gotten completely out of control. I just did a draft that he went in the 7th round. I agree. I think JCM is probably a really nice dynasty asset right now. Tyler Olson on YouTube asked, how aggressive is too aggressive on Croskey-Merritt in dynasty? I mean, listen, if you get him for what you think will be a late 2nd round pick, I don't think that's nuts because I think this will be his backfield by next year. But I also think if you're taking him in redraft for this year in the 7th round, I mean, you're going to have to be a little patient once again. Like Dan Quinn they're showing you their hand with Chris Rodriguez Jr. They have the veteran in Austin Eckler there. This is a team last year, plenty of times they leaned on veterans in those situations. So I'm a big believer in Bill Croskey's talent. And I think that talent ultimately just shines through. But I think you also need to be careful in redraft because that's a big asset to spend where I don't know if he'll give you anything in September. I really don't.
Yeah, I was in a draft this morning where he was going ahead of guys like Ramondre Stevenson and Travis Etienne, who are very
Starters.
kind of known commodities, boring players to draft, but also I think are probably going to outperform JCM just because they're starters at the moment, and JCM's role is a bit more clouded in uncertainty. Well, it's not really uncertainty. I just think we just know that he's not going to get workhorse usage.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to some. We have Matthew. A little action here. There he is, the pride of NBC Sports today. Hello, Matthew.
What's up, boys? Yeah.
Have you enjoyed the show?
Some technical difficulties, but happy to finally join you. I've been watching from afar. Connor, you've done better than Jay, just so you know.
Thanks, Matthew. That's why we're a team.
Is it because of the mustache?
Right. I got you a little bit, Evil Jay. But absolutely, you need to keep growing out the facial hair. I think you guys are spot on right about that. Like no one, like I feel like it's this weird thing where we were like literally the first show on Jacory Croskey-Merritt on Bill, literally because Connor, your pre-draft rankings before the NFL draft of having JCM, who a lot of people hadn't even heard of, having him ranked ahead of RJ Harvey in your pre-draft ranking sort of opened the eyes of a lot of people, and so we talked about him. And then he lands in Washington. But weirdly, as being sort of the first show on JCM, I feel like while we're all high on the talent, and I agree with you, this is going to be his backfield sooner rather than later. I almost feel like the hype's gotten too out of control because, to your point, it's going to be a three-headed committee initially. Like Chris Rodriguez, they like, who knows the offense, he's been there. I think JCM's talent is significantly more than Chris Rodriguez, but they like him, and he's not going to just immediately go away. So if you're drafting JCM in the 5th round, and I've seen him go in the 5th round, what's happening here is that he has to hit his peak to earn that value. And so it's weird. I almost I actually have a lot of shares of JCM from dynasty leagues that I drafted early, but now the hype's getting so out of control that I'm seeing him go around the same as you mentioned Stevenson and Etienne. I've seen him go in the James Conner, Ken Walker range. Look, we love Bill Croskey-Merritt, but curb your enthusiasm, as the wise man once said. I don't think this is my take real quickly on Brian Robinson is it's good that we know sort of where he is, but this kills his fantasy value as long as Christian McCaffrey is healthy. He's not going to get any kind of significant snaps. I do think Connor and Jay, you guys tell me if you disagree with this, but I do think that if you're drafting an insurance back for Christian McCaffrey, you prefer Brian Robinson to Isaac Guerrero or Jordan James. We sort of like Jordan James. He felt like more of a Kyle Shanahan type running back, and now he gets a veteran in Brian Robinson.
Yeah, and the backup running backs have been banged up this summer, and Kyle Shanahan needs reliability right now. So the fact, Matthew, that they made the move, even at the cost of a 6th-round pick, for a proven veteran in Brian Robinson, to me, at least for 2025, it writes off both Guerrero and Jordan James. They will be on the waiver wires, and they'll be like that unless there's multiple injuries to this backfield. Yeah, definitely. I suspect what would probably happen if McCaffrey does go down, which is the only way any of these guys are going to get relevant, is that Brian Robinson's probably the primary early down guy, and then the pass game work goes to Guerrero or James or something. I don't think that anyone is going to become a workhorse back and fulfill the McCaffrey role. Just going back to JCM for a second, the way that I see this Washington backfield now, see it very much like the 2023 Ravens, where it's Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill, and there's no singular guys, just 3 guys who are all very efficient because they're playing with Lamar Jackson, and he's such a cheat code. I think it's going to be similar for the Commanders, just where these guys are all going to produce in their limited work, but the work's going to be too limited to provide immense fantasy value. Matthew, here's one for you. At what point is Austin Eckler just totally overlooked in all of this, to the point where, just on Fantasy Life ADP right now, Eckler is in a range that is no man's land. We're talking about he's being drafted around guys he is pick 130 in redraft right now, and everybody's talking about Bill, who we love, but Eckler still has a massive role in this offense. Massive role and a defined role. He is going to be the 3rd down back. He's going to be the passing down back. They like to use him, put him in motion and everything like that. And I do,
look, Cliff Kingsbury's going to get creative, and he's going to get creative not just with Eckler, but Deebo Samuel in the backfield as well. So I agree with you, especially if you've lowered expectations. If you're like, look, I'm in a 12-team PPR league where I need like a flex guy here. Like, I think he's 10 to 12 points a game. I think he's right there in that range. I think he's going to catch 3 to 4 balls. He's going to have a shot at, like, I would think on a, you're projecting, 3 to 4 catches a game, possibly, somewhere in the 40 to 60 yards a game range, and then, a potential shot at a touchdown. And maybe he gets you 15, 20 yards rushing as well. So I agree with you. There's just upside there with Eckler, who we've seen be an elite fantasy option fairly recently. And when he got in there last year, he was effective. Health is a question, of course, with Eckler, but I agree with you. I think there's value to be had with Eckler, especially if he's going in like the 12, 13 round. He is one of those guys that just everyone's just kind of left for dead, which is insane.
Yeah, for perspective right now, Eckler typically going around pick 130 in redrafts. The running backs that are in that similar range are Nick Chubb is ahead of him, Bashaw Tutin, Kareem Hunt. He's in the, almost Blake Corum, Jaden Blue kind of range right now. And like you said, Matthew, a viable fantasy asset, especially if you were looking for somebody to help you out in the flex. By the way, the ton of comments rolling in right now. We have one here from
Planetarium Pictures.
Planetarium Pictures. Nice, Jay. Has there been a bigger shakeup before fantasy draft weekend ever? It looks like CMC stock down, Eckler stock up, Ja'Cory stock up. I'm not as high on CMC as you guys, and I don't agree with this. I don't think this does anything to his stock.
Yeah, I don't think it changes anything about Christian McCaffrey. I think this is much more about Isaac Guerrero and Jordan James and these guys, and the fact that, those guys don't represent great options if McCaffrey does go down, and they've been banged up in the preseason. And I think, look, you can plan for a Christian McCaffrey injury without anticipating that it's definitely going to happen, right? There is just a heightened injury risk with Christian McCaffrey, and I think the Niners, this move reflects that, but I don't think it changes anything so long as he's healthy.
And really nice.
Yeah,
go ahead, Matthew.
I agree with that, Jay. This move is about depth for the 49ers running back room, and just to answer the question in terms of bigger shakeup, the only thing that immediately came to mind was just sort of Isaiah Pacheco coming out of nowhere for the Chiefs. He was, again, similar to JCM, 7th round pick. In this particular case, Pacheco coming out of Rutgers, wasn't highly thought of and just had an amazing camp. And then just all of a sudden it was just like, oh, he's going to be the guy. I think about Kareem Hunt's rookie year, where it's the same thing in Kansas City, where people were really excited to him, but he was going to be in a timeshare with Spencer Ware. If you guys remember Spencer Ware. And then midway through the preseason, Spencer Ware suffers a tough injury and is out for the year. And Kareem Hunt, who is like this kind of upside rookie that you might want to draft late in drafts, or on the bottom part of a committee, all of a sudden now is the lead running back of the Kansas City Chiefs. And so those are the first ones that came to mind. I don't know about you guys, but just to answer Planetarium Pictures question.
My favorite one is when Matt LaFleur came out 2 years ago and said that rookie Romeo Doubs has some Devontae Adams in him. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, is Romeo Doubs the number one wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers coming off an MVP season? Turns out he wasn't really. That never really happened.
You have to be careful what you buy into. Let's keep the news moving here, guys. Some positive news for the Rams, as Sean McVay said Matthew Stafford is back practicing in full this week. We got to hear from Stafford with an update on his back injury.
But as far as what I've done, everything under the sun, I feel like. Obviously, our guys here have a great program, doing everything we can to try and get to feeling as good as I can. Done that, and just really everything I could possibly do. Done a ton of research, just trying to help myself out. And good thing is I feel pretty good. The last couple of days out there practicing, was able to do even a little bit more than I thought I was going to be able to do the first day, and then just been trying to stack days.
Obviously, positive news right now in Rams camp because, Jay, we can't imagine this team with this high-profile talent at wide receiver without Stafford under center.
Yeah, and I think the way to approach this is to expect that Stafford is likely going to start week one as normal. which I think has always mostly been the expectation with a bit of uncertainty baked in. I just think there's a hugely heightened re-injury risk around this. And I think it just speaks to the fact that, Stafford is a guy who's been banged up a lot in recent years. 3 years ago, missing half of the season. And it's just a concern, like, what's the back going to do if Danielle Hunter slams him into the turf in week 1? So that is the real issue. So I think that you just kind of bake in an extra added injury risk there and the ripple effects that it spread to Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua in particular. But it looks like Stafford will at least be out there week 1, Matthew.
Yeah, which is great news, obviously, for the entire Rams offense. Not just the obvious ones are Nacua and Devontae Adams, but also just Kyron Williams, right? I mean, again, if Stafford's under there, they're going to be a more efficient offense. They're going to be in scoring position more often. So this is good news. But it is, look, Stafford is somebody who's been banged up throughout his career. And, like, a 38-year-old with a, lower back injury, that doesn't just go away. So it's something we'll monitor throughout the season.
Another bit of news here, guys. A little bit of a surprising trade. Not that the player was moved, but maybe the cost of it. The Saints acquired wide receiver Devaughn Vele, who we talked a lot about week to week last year for the Broncos, in exchange for a 2026 sixth-round pick. But how about a 2027 fourth-round pick? I think the return might have even been a little higher than this. We'll double-check that in a second. But Devaughn Vele now, a much-needed addition for the Saints wide receiver room that's dealt with a ton of injuries over the last calendar year. Tyler Shuck, the rookie quarterback, who may or may not start, talked about the addition of Vele.
I think we have a lot of those big playability guys that we've had on the roster for a while, and I think having somebody that can come in and be somebody you can count on in those tough moments is going to be really good. So
what do you do after you find out? Like, did you go watch them? Like, what did
yeah
like you start doing
I pulled up some highlights. I was like, all right, let's check this guy out. I'm trying to see what's going on. But obviously super talented, super great stuff from him, and especially with the year that they had last year, being really explosive. So I'm excited to get to work with him, get to know him, and I know we're both two older guys ourselves, and get ready to roll.
Broncos got back a fourth-round pick for Vele, and this wide receiver room with the addition of Pat Bryant, Matthew, they got a little bit crowded. Troy Franklin has had a much better summer over there than his first rookie preseason as well. I think the biggest question is, how does this affect both sides, starting with Vele entering a Saints offense that has some room for targets?
Yeah, I think this is a wait and see. I mean, I think if you're in a super deep league, he got picked up in a bunch of dynasty leagues that I'm in, but like, I can't imagine drafting Devaughn Vele. Like, we don't know how good this offense is going to be. We don't know how much production there's going to be there, because at the moment, at least, Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, and Alvin Kamara are healthy. I understand the Saints wanting to have depth, that Kellen Moore is just like beyond those guys. It's just there start to become some question marks. And so Vele is a guy that, when he's gotten opportunities in Denver, has impressed. So I think this is a good NFL move, but fantasy-wise, I don't know that it really impacts that much. Because, again, unless there's an injury to one of the Saints guys I just mentioned, I can't imagine starting Vele in anything other than like the crazy deepest of leagues. And on the Denver side of the ball, you just mentioned it, right? So we'll see what happens with Pat Bryant. We'll see what happens with Troy Franklin, but we know Cortland Sutton is the one. I still carry a flicker of a flame for Marvin Mims, who I just wish could get more snaps and more playing time. Obviously, Evan Ingram coming over, there's a big signing free agent. He's going to demand a lot of targets. They've got an improved run game as well. So it clears out some opportunity there in Denver, but I don't know that you can sit here and point to any one thing like, oh, now that Devaughn Vele is gone, Troy Franklin to the moon or something like that. I still think, other than Sutton and Ingram, it's going to be a wait and see on Denver pass catchers.
Yeah, I completely agree. Another team that's adding wide receiver depth, the 49ers acquired Sky Moore from the Chiefs. Yes, that Sky Moore, in exchange for swapping 2027 6th and 7th round picks. This was a reaction to Demarcus Robinson, another part of their wide receiver depth, being suspended 3 games, part of the fallout from a misdemeanor DUI charge, Jay. I don't think Sky Moore really changes anything besides gives them a warm body. Just feels like Ricky Pearsall is built for all the targets in this offense.
Yeah, I think more than Sky Moore actually contributing to the Niners, what it mostly signals is just a reminder of how thin that receiver room is at the moment, that it really is Ricky Pearsall and then not a great deal else, at least until Brandon Ayuk gets back. But for now, and also until we get clarity on exactly what's going on with Jawan Jennings, who I guess is okay, but I'm not entirely sure what's happening there. And so until Ayuk gets back in the pass game, it's going to be Pearsall, Kittle, Jennings when he's right, and McCaffrey.
Yeah, Matthew, I feel like this move just kind of solidifies how narrow the target share is, that they went out and got Sky Moore rather than going out and getting somebody that would have any impact.
For sure. I mean, I think, you know, you're going to wait. We have to wait and see. To me, Jauan Jennings is the biggest question mark. I have no idea if Jauan Jennings is out for the next 6 games, if he's never going to play, or if he's there week 1 and plays 75% of the snaps. Like, I feel like we've just gotten no news whatsoever on Jauan Jennings, and we just have no concept. I've drafted a lot of Ricky Pearsall over the last week. You know, it feels like the target tree is going to be that, like in week 1, unless we get definitive news about Jauan Jennings, you're only going to feel good about, in terms of people that can catch the ball, Pearsall, Kittle, Christian McCaffrey. All right. But Sky Moore is somebody that had a lot of talent, just could never kind of figure it out in Kansas City. They had a lot of mouths to feed, but so it's sort of interesting. But I don't know that there's a fantasy move here other than the fact that, yeah, they're super thin at wide receiver there in San Francisco, and they're just trying to fortify.
Another bit of wide receiver buzz. This move hasn't happened yet, but Adam Schefter reports the Vikings have inquired about a trade for Adam Thielen, old friend Adam Thielen from the Panthers here. Matthew, with everything going on in Minnesota with their pass catchers right now, of course, Jordan Addison serving a 3-game suspension, Jalen Naylor dealing with a hand injury, as Schefter's tweet says, it feels like this is actually a pathway for Thielen to become fantasy viable at his age.
Immediately. This is a trade that makes so much sense on both sides. I hope this happens, right? We like Adam Thielen, friend of the podcast. He's been on the show. He's awesome. And he knows that system, obviously. And not that he has any sort of connection with J.J. McCarthy, but I think he would fit right in. I think he would be a nice complement to Justin Jefferson, to even Jordan Addison when he comes back here. We like Jalen Naylor a little bit, but you've got Hawkinson as well. Like, certainly, if Adam Thielen is a member of the Minnesota Vikings, he suddenly becomes fantasy viable. And I think it would be good for the Panthers as well, because, at least from our point of view, like, it just makes sense from their point of view, just like they need to get the young guys, right? The Panthers, you know, Adam Thielen's been a great addition to them, but, like, this is a young team that needs to sort of grow with Bryce Young. They've got T-Mac, they've got Xavier Legette, Jatavian Sanders are waiting for him. And so I think this would open up more targets potentially for Xavier Legette, because we know T-Mac's going to get his this year. So I'm really hoping this trade happens, and I think that if it does, if it happens before we get back on the air Monday, if it happens over the weekend, and you're having a draft trying to figure out where you're drafting Adam Thielen, I think he's like in the 10th round. I think he's a wide receiver 4 or 5 in that range with some upside, you know, and I prefer him obviously more in PPR than I do in redraft. But like, he's in that, you know, that kind of 10th, 11th round range of wide receivers. Yep. And you guys can pull up the Fantasy Life ADP and talk about other wide receivers that are in that range. I'm talking on, because of I'm talking on the computer I would normally use up. I would call up the fantasylife.com website because of our technical difficulties.
Indeed. I do think this speaks to the thinness of the room with these injuries, and the fact that I think a sneaky thing this year is that, so last season the Vikings, they had the 3rd highest pass rate over expectation. The only 2 teams that passed more relative to expectation of, you know, down and distance were the teams that had Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. And the Vikings were 3rd with Sam Darnold and Kevin O'Connell. This offense is very friendly to passing the ball. Kirk Cousins threw the ball a ton as well in that offense. I think this team's going to run the ball a lot more this year. I think that bringing in Jordan Mason signaled that intent. I think investing a lot of resources on the interior of the offensive line. Like, I don't think that this is going to be a team that just has J.J. McCarthy drop back 40 times. And so, yeah, if Thielen is there and Jordan Addison's out the first 3 weeks, absolutely, just because someone's going to catch passes in the offense. But I do think this offense is going to lean much more to the run this year.
Totally agree with you. That's why I was on the under for J.J. McCarthy's passing yards being at 3,600. It's not believing in McCarthy. It's understanding how they want to construct the offense and set them up for success. Matthew, you missed...
Well, also, by the way, just again, J.J. McCarthy is a rookie coming off a serious injury, and what do you do? Like, if you can run the ball effectively, that takes pressure off of J.J. McCarthy. One last thing I'll just say before we get off of Minnesota. I think we're sort of all sleeping on Jordan Addison. I get it. He's missing 3 games, but that's baked into his price right now, and he continues to drop. And if Thielen comes over, it'll drop even more. Jordan Addison is good. Like, Connor, I thought he had a great rookie year. I thought he looked the part. And now, so yes, okay, fine. You don't have them for the first 3 games. But by the way, the first 3 games, there are no buys. You should be able to replace them in your lineup pretty easily. And then you'll have him, you'll have the number 2 wide receiver on what we think is a pretty good offense. I think I think we're just all sleeping on Addison. I think people are worried too much about the suspension. It's not ideal, but you should be able to handle it in the first 3 games when there's no buys.
I think that's really fair. Addison in 15 games last year had 875 yards, and he catches touchdowns. He had 9 touchdowns. So you're looking at a 1,000-yard receiver across a full season. You look at the ADP right now, I mean, he's in the conversation behind Rome Odunze and Jerry Jeudy, and slightly in front of Chris Godwin, Deebo Samuel, Jacoby Myers. So if you could just survive those 3 games, you're getting much better value at cost with Jordan Addison. Matthew, we missed you when we were talking salary cap drafts, and we'd love some of your expertise on that as our YouTube comments were firing on full cylinder during that opening segment.
Yeah, just a couple of sort of basic things, right? Which is that I think it's important to go into a salary cap draft without any specific strategy around, oh, I've got to get this player, I've got to get this player. Because what happens in a salary cap draft, there's always value. It just depends on where it is. Sometimes it's at the very beginning. Somebody throws out Saquon Barkley, and Saquon Barkley should be going for $50, and he winds up at like 38 or 40 because people are like, I'm saving my money for Genti, or I'm saving my money for Bijan, I should say. And so it's weird, right? Or sometimes it happens in the middle where some people spend their money early, some people are saving it till late, and then there's a lull in the middle, or everyone spends their money early and values come. But there's always values. The important part is waiting and just being able to pounce. What I like to do when I go through a draft, when I set up for a salary cap draft, say you have a $200 salary cap, right? And so I like to literally just super simple on a piece of paper, put down like what my roster will look like, right? Quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 3 wide receivers, whatever it is, tight end, however many flexes you have, how many bench you have. And then I'll just sort of budget it out. I want at least 1 elite running back, and so I'll budget $55 for that. I'm making up numbers. I'm going to go cheap at tight end, so I'm going to budget $15 for tight end. I'm going to go mid-tier at quarterback, so $25. I'm making up numbers here. But you do it all that, and you just sort of write it down. RB1 is 55, RB2 is 40. I want to have 2 strong running backs, that kind of thing. And so just as you go through and you acquire players, I like to just okay, I have $55 for an RB1, but I wind up getting Devon Achane for 48. Okay, great. So now I've got $7 extra to play with, and I can move it to another position. Or conversely, I get into a bidding war for Ashton Genti. He ends up going for 61. So now I've got to find $6 elsewhere. It just sort of helps you keep track of what you're trying to budget for and where you are. The other quick strategy piece that I have is that if there's a player you really want, I like to throw him out early. Because, figure out whether you're going to get him or not. Too many people I see in they're like, oh, I want to hold on to, in my case, Amari and Hampton. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to wait so everyone spends their money, and then I'm going to throw. Look, people know who Amari and Hampton is. You're not going to sneak him by everyone, and so I'm making up a number. But let's say I budgeted $40 for Amari and Hampton. Well, then if I wait and wait and wait, and I bypass all these other running backs, and then it gets to me, and then there's 2 other crazy Amari and Hampton fans in there, and he ends up going for like $55, and I'm just like, all right, well, now I'm out. Well, then all these other people have passed me by, and now I've got to pivot, and I've got $55 for players that aren't worth that, right? And or whatever, $40 for players that aren't worth that. So I think it's just important. I'd rather throw out Amari and Hampton or Ashton Genti or Malik Neighbors, whoever your guy that you really want is, early, to see if I'm in on him or not. And if I get him, great. But if I'm not, then I can pivot, and I know how much money I have. You see some of the Fantasy Life Plus player values right here. If you buy a subscription to Fantasy Life Plus, promo code ROTO20, we have an auction generator, a value generator that you can put in whatever your scoring system is, whatever your salary cap is, and it will generate values for you specifically to your league based on settings. And you can even adjust it, like I want to go 0 RB, I want to go whatever. I got to wait on tight end. I want to cheap on tight end. Whatever your sort of salary cap there is. So those are just some kind of quick, easy tips that I like to do right there. I'm also a big believer in sort of $1 bench or $3 bench, because there comes a point where everyone is sort of the same value, and so I'd rather my money go to the majority of my starters. And like there comes a point where they're all sort of equal and whatever, let people knock themselves out and I'll just get dollar players or, $3 players, $5 players on my bench.
And once again, a reminder there from Fantasy Life Plus that you could see a lot of different examples of having a baseline price, which is really, really helpful as Jay and I went through the comment. We had a comment here from Adel Alavi. $200 budget. Would you keep Jaden at $7 or Bowers at $6? Half-point PPR, standard roster size with an additional wide receiver tight end spot. What do you think here, Matthew?
Yeah, that's a really tough one, but I think since it doesn't sound like you can get that you get extra points for the tight end, I think I'm keeping Jaden Daniels, and that's not the homer talking. I just think about who's gonna, it's hard to know you're a better judge of what your league goes. So who do you think goes for more? They're basically the same price. So just if you were to throw both players back, which would go for more money? And that's the guy you keep. My suspicion is that Jaden Daniels goes for more money than Brock Bowers. But I could be wrong on that. Again, it just sort of depends on with an additional wide receiver tight end spot, you can play a wide receiver there. I don't know. I think having an elite quarterback for $7 like Jaden Daniels, I mean, Bowers is a great price too. I don't think you can screw it up. So, but to me, it's just like, is your league quarterback crazy, or do you think Bowers goes for more? So it's really about your specific league.
We're going to take our last break. When we're back, last call is coming up next. Our picks to win the AFC East, and maybe a pick to finish in last or first place right after this. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly and $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube TV. Just download the Sportsbook app and use promo code FFHH when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Is Matthew going again?
Last call.
The crown is yours.
Here's the odds
Not yours.
board for the very competitive AFC East with the Bills as a minus 330 favorite. Jay, you have anything creative here?
Not really. Bills minus 330 for me. If I was going to take a long shot, though, it would be the Dolphins at 10-1. They did go 11-6 the last time. Tua was fully healthy. By the way, Matthew, I love the attire. I wasn't sure if you worked at NBC Sports based off of the T-shirt.
It's good confirmation.
The hat confirms it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking the chalk here as well. I would never bet on this number at minus 330, but I think the Bills win this division. I do think the Dolphins are a team that, yeah, like you said, they could come in first. There's a good chance they also finish in last, and Mike McDaniel is looking somewhere else. Matthew, what do you got?
Yeah, listen, I'm a company man is what I got here. I agree with you guys. It's the Bills. It's probably not a bet I would take because of the odds. But if I had to have one, why not if you're going to throw a long shot, how about the Jets at 19-1? If the defense shows up, if Justin Fields becomes a thing and suddenly half the Bills get hurt, you never know. All right, listen, it's closing time. You have to go home, but can't stay here. For Connor, Jay, sorry about the technical difficulties. We're back on Monday. Good luck this weekend. Peace out.